Sports for Real with Coach Hall. You know, when it comes to sports, this is a very, very small world, and you never know who you're going to run across. This past weekend, yesterday, matter of fact, I was doing a little airport ride to pick up, people who need rides, and I picked up this guy who just happened to fly in from Atlanta. As I got to talking to him, two things came out. First of all, he's from the same town where that shooting took place in Alabama a couple of weeks ago, where 4 people were killed and dozens were injured, including one of the players being killed being a player that had just signed a scholarship offer to Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks. And he was talking about this guy, and he was telling me how this guy here was a state champion in 100 meters and, seemed to have a pretty bright future for him when he got to Jack State. But the shooting, as tragic as they all are, it cut down a lot of lives and a lot of promise. And he was telling me how close he was really to the action. He doesn't live in that town anymore, but the pastor of his church, he showed me a picture of one of the guys that got shot. He's a young kid, maybe 15, 16 years old, now paralyzed from the waist down. He's still in the hospital. And as he's taking that picture with the pastor, he had a nice little smile on his face. So there's some optimism there that things are going to be as good as they can be moving forward. But as you delve into the shooting, I reported on this soon as it happened. I found out that they have actually captured some suspects 2-3 weeks ago. Actually around April 20th, a few days after it happened. I'm just finding out about it because I really didn't want to look into it too much more. But come to find out, there were 6 suspects. They shot off like 90 rounds. And the sad part about it, their ages range from 15 to 20. 2 of the suspects just happened to be cousins, and 4 of them from Tuskegee. So that's 6 lives that are going to be shot down at a very, very young age before they even start to live. Their life is pretty much over. But it's just fascinating how small the sports world is when tragedies like this make you want to be interested in what's going on, and then you actually bump into somebody who's from the area who can give you some inside information about what's taking place. Because I had no idea when he told me that the 6 people had been arrested. Nevertheless, their ages being so young. So it's included in that, a couple of cheerleaders. One of them got shot in the head. She's in critical condition. And another one's also shot in the head, but also in the body. So that one's really fighting for survival. So it's just a bad situation all the way around. But I just thought it was interesting that I would run into somebody who could give me some information on the inside like he did. The other thing we talked about as we got to talking, we got to the point where my hometown was, and I told him. And sure enough, he had heard of it before. Well, I want to know how do you hear my hometown, because it's just a little spot on the map. Matter of fact, we call it Blimp. It started out as Blip, but the younger generation put the M in there, so now it's called Blimp. Well, he's telling me about this guy that he knew. He just happened to be a football player himself. He had started out at Auburn in '82 as a defensive back, and then he went to Coach Dye at the end of the season and told him he didn't think he can play at Auburn, so he wanted to go somewhere he can play. So he himself transferred to Jack State, which is also another direct connection between this fellow and the person that had the scholarship offer that got killed. Well, as he got to talking, he said he couldn't remember the guy's name. So I guess that was a test to me. I don't know. So I called this guy's name. His name is Clayton Buford. Buford went to Auburn in '81 as a quarterback and ended up leaving as a receiver, and even got drafted to play with the Detroit Lions. He didn't know that. But as I listened to him talk, I didn't tell him the nuances he was saying was right on, because he had told me that the man wore number 11. That was also correct. So everything checked out with what this guy was saying. And even without having to check on what he said, I went and looked and got the updates on the Dadeville shooting. And sure enough, everything he said was a spot-on match. So I contacted old Buford. I don't know if he got my message yet, telling him about his old sweet mate, who just happened to also be a sweet mate with Charles Barkley, who was there at the same time. And some things about Barkley, he's kind of, what's the word? He's a divisive kind of fellow at times. But this guy here was all positive about Barkley, and he told about some of the good things he did for the Leeds, Alabama employees there during the pandemic. So you got to give the devil his due. Barkley is not all rough and tumble all the way like he comes off sometimes. He actually has a lot of good in him. And this guy was explaining to me some of the good he had done unsolicited about Charles Barkley. But I just think it's interesting that all these different tie-ins that you have with people that you never met before, and when you get to talking, they all come out. Here's a guy that know about Jack State. He's from the place where the shooting took place, and lo and behold, one of the heroes, athletic heroes of our town at that particular time, actually had a connection with this same fellow. So very small world, and it's all tied together by sports. Sports for real.